traversed the tombs of Naxxramas. We've climbed every cliff on Black Rock. Now the world cries out for heroes. As a new evil rises, there will be danger. There will be doom. There will be ancient temples filled with relics, treasures, and traps. Who will answer the call?
We will lead, explorers lead, and we are in need of explorers. Adventure we seek, cross land and sea. Want to come and join us?
Yes!
All right, and welcome back to the Hearthstone Championship here at the StarLadder I-League Championship. I am Tana Grace. I'm joined by Lothar, and we're going into our fourth match of the day, Firebat versus Neirea, and this is going to be kind of a redemption match. Both of these players looking to get at 2-2 and hope their tiebreakers will be good enough to get them through this round, and a little bit of more redemption for Firebat as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely true for Firebat because he had a small misstep in the previous game. And I'm sure he would like to redeem himself in the next match. So hopefully we'll see that and more of his Dragon Priests because that's one of the decks I really like to see. As you said, both players are sitting at 1 win and 2 losses. For both of them, it's very important to get that second win to be in the range of tiebreakers so that they can still try to advance to the next stage.
Yeah, and so whoever loses this, they're out. There's no way they're making it through this round. So this is win or go home time. And then it's also win and hope time as well because Jab has posted a 2-2 record. And if 6-0 wins in his last round against Trump, he will also post a 2-2 record. So it's going to come down to a tiebreaker between these guys. So a lot riding on this match right now. Their fate, it's in their hands for now, and then they're going to have to hope.
Yep, and both of those players have quite different lineups. Neirea is sporting a Control Warrior, which is the only Control Warrior we have seen in this group. And the only other warrior was sported by Xixo, and it was a Patron Warrior, so a completely different type, completely different archetype of the deck of that class. And Neirea is also playing the Reno Handlock Warlock. Which is quite different beast from what is Firebat bringing to the table.
Yeah, Firebat, he's going to have more of the Dragon Warlock. He's got Dragon Priest, and he's got mid-range Paladin. So, like, all of his decks are mid-range to control decks. So it's going to be interesting to see how it matches up against Neirea's lineup. Neirea does have Druid, which got some decent matchups versus some of the stuff, but I expect a lot of these games to go long.
Yep, and now he's starting with his mid-range Paladin, which is interesting because he is changing his openings all the time, so he doesn't want to be predictable in this format. And Neirea is starting with his Reno Handlock. Love this deck, really love.
Yeah,
this deck.
This is one of the cooler decks that has come out of League of Explorers. You're going to have upwards of 25 or more different cards in your deck. You're going to see some of them right now. You see the Demon Wrath in his hand. That's a card that you don't see a ton in tournament play, but you're going to see it in this deck, and you see why. He has the Reno Jackson in his hand, and that is the reason why. So you're going to see Neirea probably be a little more liberal with his life total this game as well, knowing that he already has the Reno Jackson to kind of recover all the damage that he's going to be taking.
Yeah, and if you'll be aggressively tapping, very aggressively tapping, that might also give Firebat the information that he has the Reno already in hand. So at some point, I think it's also very important in this matchup to know that Paladin has almost no burst potential, so the Warlock can be more aggressive with the taps anyway. But the Reno Jackson will just reset the board most likely from a point when Firebat will be just missing like 1 or 2 damage to finish off his opponent, and then he'll be completely blown out by the amount of heal.
And Firebat already has one of the more important cards for his deck in his hand too. Equality goes a long way in this matchup. Being able to get through something like a Molten Giant or a Mal'Ganis when they're taunted up, 9/9 Molten Giants with taunt, or pretty hard to deal with when you're playing a bunch of 1/1s and 2/2s and 3/5s. So having a card like Equality goes a long way in this matchup to get through these big board states that his deck is capable of building.
Yep. Shieldbearer, for the second time today, is popping out from Discovery. Probably will not be taken this time. And I'm sure that Abusive Sergeant is one of the best picks that Neirea can get for his deck, because there will be a big game hunter in his 30 cards that he is having in his deck, and Paladin has almost no targets for the big game hunter.
Yeah, you know what? Poor Blood Imp, man. It used to be a card that was played way back in the day, and now we just keep seeing it show up in these discovers, and no one ever takes it. Somebody give Blood Imp what it deserves. Put him in, coach. He's ready to play. He wants to get it actually in a game at some point in time, but it doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen. No, Firebat, he's going to be able to freeze him here, but, you know, it's not really relevant. There's not going to be a lot of weapons going on in Neirea's deck. You know, he may have a Lord Jaraxxus at some point, but if we get to that point in the game and the Snow Chugger has survived the entire time and something else has gone horribly, horribly wrong. But I also like that Firebat put 2 damage on his minion here, so it actually trades into the Sludge Belcher instead of just bouncing off of it here. But Neirea is going to go ahead and make a pretty aggressive play here and put the onus back on Firebat by getting this Emperor Thorson into play really early.
Yeah, it makes also the Molten Giant 1 mana cost less, which might be the most important thing here, because the fact that you can drop a huge minion on board and tone it up after your opponent will play the Equality. This will be huge, but the double Murloc Knight.
Yeah, for the second day in a row, we're seeing Murloc Knight spawn a Murloc Knight, and this can spell a lot of problems for Neirea. Now, with the discount, he has, you know, options, a little more options than normal. The Mal'Ganis is only 8 mana now as well, so if he ever gets to turn 10, he can Mal'Ganis plus hero power if he ever gets to a board state where that's going to be good enough. Because, you know what, that's pretty good. You get to draw a free card here. Now, he's going to start to get some damage on these minions from Firebat here. He's going to use Implosion to take out one of these Murloc Knights and hope that the remaining imps are going to be enough to take care of it here. Firebat, though, can rebuild pretty well here this turn.
Yep. But still, the 1 Murloc Knight will make a difference. But not as much as the first tap. So,
yeah, getting the haste Murloc here, though, the charge Murloc, could actually be pretty good. If Firebat wants, he can take care of 2 of the 1/1s here, 1 with his weapon, 1 with the Bluegill Warrior, and this helps protect his Murloc Knight from the 1/1 that's on board, and he's going to go ahead and just take care of that 1/1 as well.
And now there's the big game hunter with the Abusive Surgeon, but there's no target for that, even now with the Abusive Surgeon, so he needs to get that Hellfire. As I said before, Hellfire is the MVP card against Paladins. If you don't have Hellfire, you probably won't win.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, and Neirea only runs 1 copy of that card as far as we know, because this is a Reno Jackson deck.
But he has Demon Wrath. Also.
Yeah, he has the Demon Wrath that he's already played this game, plus he has the Shadow Flame in his hand, so that's something that he could possibly move towards in the future. You know, he has this Abusive Sergeant. If he ever gets value out of it, you can Shadow Flame that for 2, and that's, you know, not a terrible play. It's kind of like a 4 mana Demon Wrath here as well, since you have the discount on the Abusive Sergeant.
And
you know, Neirea, he has all the cards in the world, but he's got to figure out what's the right way to kind of navigate this game over the next turn. He's just going to pass with the 5 mana.
I just wanted to say there are no good cards at all, because if you Reno Jackson right now, your Molten Giant becomes useless for the rest of the game. But you're losing any kind of board control on 10-8, and this is a huge deal.
Now, this gives a lot of information over to Firebat to what kind of hand Neirea has. Now, he knows there's probably a Molten Giant now because of the way this was played. You've got to believe that he believes that there's a Molten Giant. So does Firebat attack? How much does he attack for? And then this leads to big turns from Neirea. He's going to be able to go Molten Giant plus Reno Jackson in the same turn if he wants, and then kind of take over the game from there. Because don't forget, Reno Jackson's pretty big himself at 4/6.
Well, it's true. But at the same time, Firebat doesn't need to be hasty, because he knows he's playing against that type of Warlock. So what he needs to do is to set up a lever with the Quartermaster and just threaten Neirea to do something. And now Neirea is in the point when he's being baited out to play that Molten Giant, and Firebat has access to Equality.
Yeah, this is something we talked about earlier. Quality pretty big in this matchup because Paladin doesn't have a lot of easy and clean ways to get through gigantic minions. You know, he might have a BGH or something in his deck, but he doesn't have a lot of removal spells that are just cleanly going to deal with it. Quality goes a long way in dealing with these giant boards that Neirea can put up. I mean, Molten Giant is gigantic versus anything in Firebat's deck. It's bigger than any minion that he can put into play.
Yep. But now let's see what is the proper response here. If you don't want to overextend because you know that Firebat is might have the equality, so
he might do the Shadow Flame play that we were talking about here, the Abusive Sergeant, and then just deal 2 to everything because he's just trying to pace this game as well as possible. He might just Reno here as well, but if he after Molten Gianting, so he's gonna like kill this whole board, Molten Giant Reno, or possible just Defender as well and get another tap in, which I don't hate because, like you said, there's not a lot of bursts that you got to worry about from Firebat's deck.
But he's not tapping anymore, which is interesting because he has the access to Reno Jackson, but he would be dead to a Consecration Equality combo, so that's the reason why he is not tapping.
Yeah, good no tap here from Neirea.
And the Belcher kind of helps here in this situation, but Neirea will be able to reset the health points right now.
Yeah, and I love the no attack from Firebat here because he knows that one of the only outs Neirea has here, or one of the best outs that Neirea has here, is a Reno Jackson. And you don't want to just give him extra value by putting him at a lower life total, using the charge up on your weapon, and then your opponent is gaining all of that life back.
Yep. Now let's see what Neirea will do here. I feel this is like the turn when you need to drop Nero, Reno Jackson, because you know it's coming to a point when you would like to have already the really safe spot with 30 HP, and you can still squeeze an additional tap here, and maybe you want to have that as soon as possible with still a Hellfire and a Demon Wrath sitting in the deck.
Yeah, I think he used his Demon Wrath already and his Shadow Flame, so there's just the Hellfire left that Firebat needs to worry about. And he's going to actually, I like the way he's doing this. He's trying to get all of those AoE effects out of Neirea's deck because he has a Quartermaster Muster for Battle sitting in his hand. And oh no, he discarded the Reno to his Doomguard here. That is big.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that he went for the Doomguard, you know?
I'm shocked. Yeah.
It's really a big thing. I mean, he just lost the game because of that.
This is lethal. Yeah.
I was surprised that he didn't use the Reno that turn. As I said, you wanted to save. He was basically out of reach of anything from the Paladin's palette if he would play the Reno Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big risky play from Neirea, and he gets punished for it. I mean, the odds are that he's not going to discard Reno there, but if you do, this is what happens. It opens the door up for Firebat to just steal a game. Because I feel like that game was pretty winnable for Neirea. You know, if he Reno Jackson's that turn, he just gains a lot, and he's got so much game over the next couple turns that, you know, the onus is on Firebat to really start to push, you know, and really start to do a lot of damage to him. And he would maybe, you know, a greedier play, which is fine sometimes. You know, if he doesn't discard Reno Jackson there, I think Neirea is in an amazing spot. But, you know, he took that risk, and he discarded Reno Jackson, and ended up costing him the game.
Yep, I'm really surprised. Like, this is something I didn't anticipate at all. And usually you also would like to have the minion move or charge on board first. So it was like a situation when you have an option to play Twilight Drake first before a minion like Blackened Corruptor to have the double impact on the board next turn. And it seems like, well, Neirea chose the really risky route. And it didn't.
And you're getting your wish. Here is the Dragon Priest deck. And settle in, boys. This game might not go too fast. We've got the Control Warrior deck on Neirea's side. He's already got an Armor Smith to pair with the Shield Slam to get some extra power out of that. And he already has Justicar True Heart in his hand. That is a card that's going to be pretty big because there's a chance that at some point in time he can get to a life total that Firebat might not have enough damage left in his deck to kill him.
That's true.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the important thing here is Neirea can't let the board get out of control here. I mean, he has a lot of ways to deal with, these little pesky minions. He can't let Firebat just get too much value from everything, but he also has to keep a way to kill Ysera. That's, I think, the card that is like the biggest deal in this matchup for his deck, right?
Yeah, Ysera is one of the biggest minions to deal with, and it's a problematic card for the priest because the most convenient way to deal with an Ysera is to Cabal Shadow Priest and Shrinkmeister it, so you can take control of it, and you gain even the draw from it at the same turn, and that's like the biggest blowout that can happen. But at the same time, it's hard to pull off when you're playing only one Shrinkmeister, if I'm not mistaken, in this priest deck, right? So
yeah, I mean, he has a Sylvanas, so that's the card I think would come out. I mean, you would have to think he doesn't have room for an extra Shrinkmeister there, but that's another card that that Firebat has in his deck that isn't always in these Dragon Priest decks and can go a long way in this matchup too. So we were talking about he had actually, kind of tacked in this Sylvanas to this deck, and it's paying some dividends for him in this matchup. I mean, it looks great against all the decks that Neirea brings to the table.
Yeah, but this is Conquest, so, it's just one win per deck. It doesn't really matter if you have all the good matchups, you just have to win once.
Right. Yeah, I just like the idea that Firebat's trying to get the best matchups across the board of all of his decks versus this group. So I really like the Sylvanas there, and this is what we're talking about. This is starting to get a little out of hand on Firebat's side of the board. These guys, they're not hitting super hard. Neirea is still at 30, but this is annoying. There's a lot of minions on the other side of the board. There's a lot of extra card draw as well on Firebat's side of the board, so he's going to keep just pecking away. Keep shredding that armor. That's important as well. You can't let these shield blocks, these shield slams get really out of hand and stuff. So
yeah, this is very important to chip off the armor points as consistently as you can, because that keeps your opponent from shield slamming the biggest threats on the board without the access to shield blocks or bashes. Sorry.
Yeah, and so Neirea was thinking about possibly executing the Northshire Cleric there. I mean, this card is getting a lot of value as this game goes on, but it does port 2 mana from Firebat every turn. It is 2 mana draw card here, but there is something to be said about that. He's not getting to play on curve as well, but it's not the end of the world here. He gets to keep advancing his board a little bit. Looks like we're going to get another little annoying guy, as you like to call him, in play, and just keep chipping away at Neirea.
Yep, and this is something that is annoying for Neirea to deal with, because those minions are not dying from the attack from the Fury War Axe. They can always be healed up, so they will be out of range. And yeah.
Now this Emperor is going to get to be put in play by Neirea here. Now this is going to kind of speed the game up a little bit for him here. Firebat has to answer this in some way, shape, or form. He can't let it sit around. And the discount that he gets from this is going to be kind of big. A cheaper Baron Geddon can have a huge impact on turn. He even has Justicar Trueheart plus tank up if he wants next turn, because that's actually a pretty big deal in this matchup. Gaining 4 every turn and being able to go over 30. I mean, there's a chance this match goes to fatigue.
You think so? That this will be the case? I mean, probably one of the sides will go out of card advantage from the hand until that point, and the game will be just smashed by a single minion dealing constant damage each turn.
Yeah, I was saying, I don't think it's going to be this game in particular, but it is something that does happen every now and then in these, that like the control warrior can actually play a game where they're actively trying to get you to fatigue. They're just going to try to outlast you and kill everything you do, because you don't, as a Dragon Priest, you have a limited amount of like damage that you can do out of your deck. And if you get to fatigue, you're a huge favorite, since you can actually go over your starting life total, and the Priest deck cannot.
That's very true. That's one of the biggest assets that the warrior has.
Yeah, just outlasting people. I mean, a lot of people call it the resident sleeper deck, because honestly, Neirea hasn't really done anything in this game. Like nothing, super, progressive. He's just been answering everything Firebat's doing, chipping away at him. But Firebat's making headway too. He's drawing extra cards, getting some damage in, shredding this armor, and doing whatever he can to pressure Neirea. Neirea is slowly running out of cards.
He is, but he still has access to big hitters like the Baron Geddon, like Gromash, but as you said, it's not really that important if a single minion on board can just chip off away the armor he has, and just solely build board control for Firebat, especially with those two Cabal Shadow Priests. Every single minion that is just smaller than 4 mana will be swept away from the board instantly. It's a single Quartermaster, Armor Smith, the Acolyte of Pain, which is the MVP for Neirea's Warrior to get the card advantage back, can be taken by Firebat to his own needs.
And I like the fact that Neirea just refuses to execute this Northshire Cleric. He's showing that he is okay with Firebat drawing extra cards if Firebat's going to get to fatigue before him, because he has to have an answer to something like Ysera out of Firebat's deck. That is a way that Firebat can actually get ahead and stay ahead in this matchup and cause a real problem for Neirea. I mean, but the problem is Neirea, again, we're saying he's starting to run out of cards here to deal with, and Firebat just keeps drawing extra ones every turn.
It's very similar to, in this matchup, it's very similar to a situation where Warrior has to battle against Druid, mid-range Druid, because those minions are huge, they're not easy to remove, and the only difference is here that Priest doesn't have the access to burst a combo like Force of Nature and Savage Roar, and this makes a difference.
Yeah, well, he finally decides to execute that. That was a lot of value from that Northshire Cleric that Firebat has got in this game. He's gotten a ton of damage, drawn so many extra cards, and he finally gets to trade it for an execute. Now, Firebat is the one who's behind on initiative here, but he has a ton of cards in his hand, so he's got to figure out a way to navigate and get in these last couple points of damage here, because Neirea is gaining 4 life a turn and has a 7/5 in play, so it's going to be hard to deal with this and make headway in this game and keep pressuring Neirea.
Well, he knows that there's no way that he can battle now, like race the Warrior. So he needs to battle for board control. Otherwise, he will be always behind. If you let the Warrior do the trades, they will be always favoring him. So he'll be losing board control, and that's something that Firebat doesn't want at all. He needs those minions on board to have better position to to smuggle those points of damage every single turn.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, and I think Neirea is in full lockdown mode now. He's just going to try to control the game for here on out, because him playing the Grom the way that he did, you know, he's committing to a line where I don't have Grom as a finisher anymore, and he's pretty sure this Baron cannot live for the rest of the game. So I think he's going to just try to weather the storm here, I guess, and trying to win the game this way. But it's going to be pretty rough if he keeps drawing this way. This Cruel Taskmaster and this Armor Smith and this Big Game Hunter, they're not going to do a whole lot against what Firebat has in his hand.
Yeah, exactly. And Neirea didn't sacrifice the 1/2 minion, although he probably knows that there will be a couple Shadow Priests. But he has 2 small minions already in hand, which can't be really played anyway. Very interesting situation for Firebat if he will go for the couple Shadow Priests to take the 1/2 minion. I think he should. Yeah.
Yeah,
the reason why. Oh no! Oh no! Your game has been disconnected from the BattleNet. No!
Oh no! And so,
good that we were sitting naked here, you know?
Yeah, I know, right?
That was quite sudden.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting situation. They're going to talk it over with, I'm guessing, the admin for the tournament and see what happens, because there's no clear winner in the game.
I'm sure that was the only problem with the spectator mod, you know? It wasn't the problem of the game itself. So
the game is still going, okay.
Yeah, of course, spectator mode bug. No panic, guys. The game is still on the way. We'll see how it goes. We'll try to be reconnected into the game. But what I wanted to say, the Cabal Shadow Priest is just a huge pain for Warrior to deal with, because it has 5 HP. It can be dealt with a weapon. Even if your opponent will use his... there was a Shields Maiden, right? Which is a 5/5 on the Cabal Shadow Priest. There's still the 1/2 taunt minion that stands in the way. So Warrior has to deal first with that taunt minion to even trade with the Cabal Shadow Priest. So it's a very annoying situation for the Warrior. And I think that was a good situation to use the Cabal Shadow Priest right there.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to actually come down to being the difference in this game for Firebat, because I feel that he's slightly... I feel that he's slightly ahead. You know, Neirea does have Tank Up going, but Firebat just has so many cards in his hand and so many decent threats that eventually the players got DC'd also, we're actually being told. I saw a look on Firebat's face when it happened that it looks like he reacted to it as well. So I felt that like it's possible they got disconnected, so it looks like they may have. So what usually happens in the situation, since there was no clear winner, is they just regame it. So they just play the game up over again and start from the beginning. So that's a little unfortunate, I think, for Firebat, because I feel that he was a little ahead in that game. He had kind of weathered the storm, gotten through a Grom already. He already had his Ysera in his hand, so he was like going to be able to set up boards that I feel that he was going to set up a board that Neirea was going to have to brawl. You know, he's going to get a few, and then as soon as the brawl's over with, he's just going to drop Ysera and then probably be able to just win from there.
Yeah. I mean, Firebat was ahead, but he still wasn't the clear winner. So, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we're having the players relog, so it'll be just a second before we get that game fired back up. A little unfortunate for Firebat, but in the spirit of the game, I mean, as you said, there's no clear winner. Nobody had lethal on board, so they're probably just going to have to regame this one. We're going to get a word from our admin as soon as we possibly can. Got to feel a little bit for Firebat there. He's up 1-0 here in this match already and was in a decent spot to move to 2-0. Again, in this match, both of these players are 1-2. They're looking to even their records at 2-2 if they were to win this match, and they really need to do that and then hope for their tiebreakers to be good enough. Jab is sitting at 2-2 right now. Trump is at 3-0, so he's into the next round. And Trump is going to be playing in our last match of the day against 6-0, who is 1-2. So if 6-0 wins that match, he'll also be joining Jab at 2-2, and the winner of this match at 2-2. So then it'll come down to tiebreakers. And there you can see it. I was going to say, just for a brief moment, you could have seen what happened here today. And we're back. So this is what happened here today. Jab took out Neirea in the first match with quite a highlight from the first match, right, Lothar?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, every single game is a highlight here. Like, we have some outrageous situations in almost every single game, like the Jab's super fast combo right on tin 4. This is something that I'll remember for quite a while, because it's just outrageous. And then how can you finish a game? How fast can you finish a game with Druid? I think only Shaman is more capable of doing that with some crazy combos. But yeah, Druid is the competitive deck that is being seen in every single tournament.
Yeah, exactly. I think we saw Firebat get a turn 3 win against Stan Sivka once, where Sivka just like tapped, and Firebat had like whirling Zapomatics and 2 Rockbiter weapons that had exactly lethal. I think that was like the only time I've seen something faster than that. In the second match, we saw Firebat lose to 6-0, and 6-0, who came in at 0-2 and only won 1 game yesterday, got a 3-1 win, which was big for him to get himself back into this one. And then in our third match of the day, we saw Trump triumph over Jab 3-1, moving himself to 3-0 as an overall record and into the next round. I mean, Trump, wow, he's been so impressive here in this group the last two today and yesterday. I got to say, every time I see him play, it just seems he gets better and better.
Yeah, well, he's improving a lot. He's playing the game as his main thing in life, right? He's spending a lot of time on it, and I know he's on playing it on stream, but also off stream, so he's living by it. And you can't really say that about every single streamer, you know? Usually they only play the Hearthstone when they stream, and that's it. But some of them are putting more work into it, and it's actually worth it, right? Trump improved vastly from what he presented in those first tournaments he was in, and should be considered as one of the better players right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give an update to what's going on, because we're going to stay here until we get our next game on. Apparently, there might be a server issue on EU, because it looks like we're moving the players over to the NA server so they can finish out their match. Thankfully, we have that option. We have the technology. We can do this. We can finish this up for these guys. So it's taking just a second to switch over accounts, get the players logged in, get them ready to go, setting up the spectator client. It's going to take just a minute, guys, and then we'll have some more Hearthstone for you. You are watching the StarLadder and iLeague Hearthstone Championship here. I'm Tannen Grace. I'm joined by Lothar, and we are in the fourth match of the day, and Firebat is up 1-0 here over Neirea. We got about, I'd say, like 60-70% done with a game there of Dragon Priest versus Control Warrior. Firebat looked like he was in a pretty good spot, but there was no clean or clear winner of that game. So I'm guessing we're just going to have a regame here.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. Like, no clear winner. Although Neirea uses 2 big hitters in the deck, there was still a Dr. Bowman's deck, that would my guess. And he has Jessica going, so he could have gone into a really slow mode in the upcoming turns. But at the same time, I feel like Priest could have grinded out. But yeah, you can't really predict that.
Yeah, it's about to say, I feel that the game was going into a way that Neirea was going to have to brawl at some point in time. Like, Firebat was going to set that up, and then at that point, he's pretty cold to the Ysera that Firebat has in his hand, and that Firebat eventually would possibly win from there, but you never know. Crazy stuff happens. Firebat can draw really bad cards for the rest of the game, and Neirea draws nothing but heavy hitters, like 3 or 4 turns in a row, and really turns the game around. Some crazy things have happened, so in the spirit of the game, it's probably just going to be a re-game, as we said. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen in the rest of this match, because these guys are fighting to get to 2-2, and they're fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their tournament lives to try to move on to the next stage. So the way this tournament works is all the first groups, you're going to have a couple people moving on from them, and then they're going to regroup and then make a top 8 from there and play in a LAN final in January. And they're playing for some pretty big prizes here, too. A lot of money up for grabs. And we talked about this a little earlier. This is what a lot of players might want a little bit more, or just as much as the money. There's a lot of prestige here as well, Lothar.
Yeah, a lot of players that are playing in this tournament still are lacking their first tournament win. And this is something you want to have under your belt as soon as possible. So players like Neirea, an example, I think it's very important for him to advance to the next stage and to the final stage as well, and hopefully win the whole tournament. Because first of all, he's lacking the champion title, and second of all, it's also in not in his home country, right? But it's kind of like it's in his vicinity, so it feels like he should be the representative of that area, right? So I feel like he's double pressured here, and it doesn't affect the player in a good way if you're under pressure, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, not winning a tournament, like never getting that out of the way, that's a lot of pressure too for guys that are always competing. You're like, man, I've got a bunch of second places, I've got a bunch of third places, but I can never break through in that last match. And it starts to wear on you, it starts to add pressure to you, and it can affect you. And then once you get that first big win out of the way, I've seen this happen with a lot of players in a lot of games. Once they get that first big win, it just snowballs from there. They start winning way more often. They just seem more relaxed. It just seems easier to them, because they've got it out of the way. It's no longer that insurmountable thing that's been in front of you your whole career. Now it's, I've been here before, I've done this before, let's just do it again.
Yeah, well, let's start to touch the topic about winners and in general in tournaments, because it's we both come from a different background. We mainly come from the traditional card games, and in my experience, the winners of the tournaments are not so glorified as in Hearthstone, right? It's important to have that top 8 finish. It's important to have that top 16 finish, whatever it is. And it seems like Hearthstone is getting that kind of vibe of it. Also, with tournaments like DreamHack that is sporting 200 players in one place, playing Swiss, then it's a cut to top 16 or to top 8. It still requires some tweaks, but I think it's the right direction that Hearthstone is getting into, because we know it's a card game, and if you're a very good player, you should do well in a Swiss portion. But at the same time, everyone knows that after that cut, there's single elimination, and it doesn't really matter that much if you lose in quarters, semis, or in finals, because every single player from that cut would probably make it at some point of the day with just a little more amount of luck to the finals, right? So it's more important to just show off in the Swiss portion than in the actual playoffs. But
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, but in the Hearthstone community, there's still that kind of approach that you have to win the tournament, otherwise you're bad.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with you there. It does seem like the victors of tournaments are a little more, celebrated than, the consistent players. And in every other game that I've played, especially professional like Magic or poker, you talk a lot about these guys that they're just always there. They're always competing. They're always in top 8s. They're always at final tables. and they're like a little more celebrated in that game. And I think we're going to get to that in Hearthstone. As you said, I think it's moving to that direction, and it's moving in the right direction, in my opinion. Hearthstone's still pretty new to the competitive card game scene. It's only been around for like a couple years now. We only have 2 world champions, but you're seeing players like Jab make deep runs both years. Kranich made deep runs both years, and they're starting to talk about that. They talked about how Kranich was the only guy to make top 8 both years. And, you got a little bit of, press on that. Jab came within, a win of getting there. It's super impressive. And then you're seeing these players that are like constantly in top 8. So like you're starting to see it go that way. And I would like to see that as well. I'm in agreement with you that we should start celebrating the consistency a little bit more. I feel that Tice is also another player that we can bring up for this as well. They talked about it a lot during BlizzCon about just how good he's been in the last 6 months, and his overall record he had just like over a 70% win percentage at some point for like a couple month period in professional play, and that's just unbelievable to me, that kind of record. And I just completely agree with you. We should definitely be celebrating these super consistent players a little bit more.
Okay, we just got information that the players are switching to NA right now and making the decks. So it will take a few minutes, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the players are they're actually having to rebuild their decks on another server. So there's actually going to be just a small break here, guys. We're going to take one small break and let these guys finish their cards over into the other accounts. And so it looks like we're going to go to a small break, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll be able to fix this problem and be right back to finish this match between Firebat and Neirea. Don't go anywhere, guys. This break is going to be really, really short, and then we'll have some Hearthstone with you when we come back.